Why is it that no matter how much you try, that one person keeps popping up in your mind? It's like they're living rent-free in your head, showing up in your dreams, in the middle of your day, even in the quiet moments when you wish your mind would just move on. Maybe it's someone you loved, someone who hurt you, or maybe someone you never even had the chance to be with. And yet, here they are, like a song stuck on repeat you can't turn off. But what if I told you there's a real reason your brain won't let go? And it's not just about missing them. It's about the way you're wired, the way your soul remembers, and the way your heart refuses to close a chapter it thinks is unfinished. Have you ever noticed how a single thought about someone can spiral into hours of replaying old conversations, imagining new ones, or even picturing what they're doing right now? It feels almost out of your control, like your brain has created its own playlist and keeps hitting repeat on their name, their face, their voice. This isn't random. The mind doesn't just latch onto anyone for no reason. When someone gets stuck in your thoughts, it's usually because they've left a kind of imprint, like wet cement, that hardened with their shape pressed into it. It could be a memory of how they made you feel, the comfort they gave, or the way they broke your heart. Those moments become sticky, and your brain loves to revisit them. Think about how a catchy song gets trapped in your head. You don't even try to remember it, but your brain keeps humming it back to you. That's how people can become mental echoes. And the more we fight those thoughts, the louder they sometimes get. It's as if the brain is saying, "No, we're not done here." Pay attention, and that's the strange power of a thought loop. It doesn't just remind you of the person, it pulls you into reliving the emotions connected to them. Science shows us that when you can't stop thinking about someone, it's not just about willpower or choice. It's about chemistry. The brain has its own reward system, and certain people light it up like fireworks. When you interact with someone who makes you feel seen, loved, or even rejected in a powerful way, your brain releases chemicals like dopamine and oxytocin. Dopamine is the feel-good chemical that makes you crave more of whatever gave you that rush. Oxytocin is sometimes called the bonding hormone, the same one released when a mother holds her baby or when two people hug for a long time. Together, they create a cocktail that tells your brain, "This person matters. Hold on to them." That's why, even after the person is gone, your brain replays them. It's the same system that keeps people addicted to sugar or scrolling on their phones. Your brain remembers the rush and wants it back. Serotonin, another key chemical, is linked to mood and focus. In people who are deeply infatuated, studies have shown serotonin levels drop in a way that resembles obsessive-compulsive disorder. That's why you might find yourself checking your phone every 5 minutes, rereading old messages or daydreaming endlessly. It's not that you're weak, it's that your brain is literally wired to fixate when it feels a strong emotional pull. This is why love, heartbreak, or even a brief but intense connection can feel like an obsession. The brain tags the person as special and stores them in a category where normal rules don't apply. You might forget where you put your keys, but you'll remember the sound of their laugh from years ago. Neuroscientists have found that the same regions of the brain activated by romantic attachment are also activated by addictive substances. In other words, your brain doesn't always see people as just people. It can treat them like a drug. When you think about someone over and over, it's often because of the emotional weight tied to them. Emotions act like glue for memories. The stronger the emotion, the deeper the imprint. If someone made you laugh until you cried, or if they hurt you so badly you couldn't breathe, your brain stores those moments in high definition. It's not just a memory. It's an experience your whole body remembers. That's why certain names, places, or even smells can pull that person right back into your mind, as if no time has passed. What's even more interesting is that pain leaves a sharper mark than joy. Psychologists call this negativity bias, the brain's survival instinct to hold on to painful events so we can avoid them in the future. That's why you might remember the sting of rejection more vividly than the dozens of times someone complimented you. It's why heartbreak lingers so much longer than a happy date. Your mind treats pain as urgent and unforgettable. Nostalgia also plays a big role. When we're missing someone, our brains often highlight the best moments with them while softening the bad ones. That's why people look back on old relationships with a kind of dreamy glow, even if those relationships were messy or painful in reality. It's not dishonesty. It's your mind's way of holding on to what once made you feel alive. Every time that emotional memory gets triggered, it's like pressing play on an old movie. The more you replay it, the more familiar and comforting it feels, even if it also hurts. And this is why some people feel unforgettable. They're tied not just to what happened, but to how deeply it made you feel. One of the biggest reasons you can't stop thinking about someone is because the story with them never really ended in your mind. Our brains crave closure. We like neat endings, wrapped-up conversations, answers that tie things together. But when a relationship or connection stops suddenly, without explanation or resolution, it leaves an open loop. That open loop can haunt you, because your mind keeps trying to finish the story. It's like reading a book, and the last chapter is ripped out. You can't help but imagine what should have happened, over and over. Think about the people you've moved on from easily. Chances are, those were the relationships or friendships where you knew why they ended. Maybe you had a final talk. Maybe you grew apart naturally. Maybe there was a clear reason to let go. Your brain could put that file away. But with unfinished stories, it's different. If someone ghosted you, betrayed you without explanation, or if circumstances pulled you apart without a choice, the ending feels stolen. That's when your thoughts loop back, searching for answers that never come. This is also why people often obsess over the one that got away. It's not necessarily that the person was better than anyone else. It's that the what if never got resolved. What if we had one more conversation? What if I had told them how I felt? What if things had gone differently? These questions don't just sit quietly, they echo. And because the brain hates uncertainty, it treats the lack of closure like unfinished business. Until you make peace with the fact that some stories don't get endings, your mind will keep trying to write one on its own, and that can make the person feel impossible to forget. Beyond science and psychology, there's a deeper layer to why someone can feel impossible to shake, and that's the spiritual side. Many people describe it as a soul tie, a bond that goes beyond memories or feelings. In relationships, especially intimate ones, you don't just share time together, you share pieces of yourself. The Bible says, "The two shall become one flesh," and that's not just about physical closeness. It's about a kind of spiritual knitting together. When you give your heart to someone, when you pour out your trust, when you connect in ways that are vulnerable and raw, it leaves a mark on your soul. That's why even when the person is no longer in your life, it feels like a piece of them still lives in you. This is why people who have gone through breakups or toxic relationships sometimes say they feel chained or tied to the person, even long after the relationship ended. It's not just a habit of thought, it feels spiritual. Some connections are so deep, they leave scars, the way a wound does on skin. The scar might fade, but it never truly disappears. For some, these bonds are beautiful reminders of love and growth. For others, they feel like chains that hold them back from peace. And while science can explain chemicals and memories, it can't always explain the weight of what we carry in our souls. That's why prayer, forgiveness, and surrender are often part of the process of healing. It's not just about forgetting. It's about releasing. Because when a bond is spiritual, it can't be cut with logic alone. It takes intentional choice, and sometimes divine help, to truly let someone go. That's why you might feel haunted by them. It's not just your mind holding on. It's your soul remembering what was shared. Sometimes the people you can't stop thinking about aren't the ones you loved, but the ones who hurt you the most. Trauma has a way of burning itself into memory with a sharpness that joy rarely matches. Your brain is wired to remember danger and pain more clearly than peace, because it's part of survival. If a child touches a hot stove once, the brain makes sure they'll never forget it. In the same way, when someone causes deep emotional pain, your mind tags that person as significant, almost as if it's warning you, don't forget this. Remember what happened. That's why many people still remember a harsh teacher more vividly than the kind ones, or a bully's insults more than a friend's encouragement. Negative experiences stick harder because the brain wants to protect you from repeating them. When someone wounds you emotionally, especially in betrayal or abuse, your body and mind store the memory like a scar. The smell of their perfume, a place you went together, even a tone of voice can trigger the same feelings again, pulling them back into your thoughts without your permission. This is also why people who survive toxic relationships often struggle with intrusive memories. The brain doesn't just let go of what felt unsafe. It replays it, sometimes obsessively, in an effort to make sense of it or prevent it from happening again. But ironically, this survival instinct keeps the person alive in your mind long after they're gone. You don't think about them because you want to. You think about them because your brain has filed them under never forget. And until healing takes place, those memories can resurface again and again, making it seem like they're still controlling you, even when they're not in your life anymore. When it comes to crushes, the reason they take up so much space in your head has a lot to do with the thrill of possibility. A crush is like a spark your brain keeps fanning into flames, even if it never turns into anything real. The novelty of it, wondering what could happen, imagining conversations, playing out scenarios in your mind, creates a steady flow of dopamine. Every little smile, every text, every glance feels like a jackpot win, and your brain wants to chase that feeling again and again. That's why you can lie awake at night replaying something as simple as a 2-minute interaction. Crushes also create what's called a reward prediction error. This is a fancy way of saying your brain is always guessing what might happen next. If the person gives you attention, your brain celebrates. If they ignore you, your brain keeps guessing, maybe next time. That guessing game creates a loop where you keep thinking about them, hoping for another small piece of validation. It's the same loop that keeps people hooked on slot machines. Never knowing when the next win will come makes the game addictive. And because crushes often live in the land of what if, they tend to linger longer than we expect. Since most crushes don't turn into real relationships, the brain keeps holding on to the fantasy of what could have been. That fantasy sometimes becomes more powerful than reality because it's untouched by flaws or disappointments. In your mind, the crush stays perfect, exciting, untouchable. That's why people can remember a teenage crush years later, even if they never exchanged more than a few words. It's not the person themselves you're tied to. It's the idea of them, the endless story your mind has built around what might have been. Exes are some of the hardest people to stop thinking about, and there's a reason breakups feel like withdrawal. When you're in a relationship, your brain gets used to a steady supply of dopamine, oxytocin, and other bonding chemicals every time you see, touch, or even hear from that person. Over time, your brain builds a pattern. This person equals safety, pleasure, and reward. Then suddenly, After a breakup, that supply is cut off. To your brain, it feels like losing a drug. That's why breakups often come with cravings, mood swings, and even physical symptoms like loss of sleep or appetite. Studies show that the brain scans of people going through heartbreak look almost identical to those of addicts going through withdrawal. That's why you can find yourself reaching for your phone to check their social media, rereading old texts, or feeling waves of longing out of nowhere. Your brain is begging for the hit it used to get. And because your memories of that person are tied to so many everyday triggers, songs, smells, places, you're reminded of them constantly. The timeline for moving on is different for everyone. Some studies suggest it takes about 3 to 6 months for people to start feeling like themselves again. But others show that the emotional residue of a breakup can linger for years. That's especially true if the relationship was intense, first love, or ended without closure. The mind keeps circling back, not because you still want the person, but because your brain hasn't fully rewired itself. And here's the kicker. Nostalgia makes it even harder. After a breakup, your brain often highlights the good times while dimming the bad. You remember the laughter, the warmth, the intimacy, but forget the arguments and frustrations. That selective memory keeps the ex alive in your thoughts, making you wonder if losing them was a mistake. It's not just missing them. It's your brain struggling to unlearn someone it once treated as home. Culture plays a huge role in why certain people linger in our minds long after they're gone. Movies, songs, and stories often paint love and heartbreak as epic, unforgettable events. Think about how many songs are about the one that got away, or how many films revolve around the idea of soulmates and impossible love. When we consume these stories, our brains start to frame our own experiences in the same dramatic light. Instead of just seeing a breakup or a passing crush as part of life, we start to see it as a defining chapter, almost like we're characters in a movie ourselves. Music especially has a way of keeping people alive in your memory. A single song tied to someone can bring back an entire flood of emotions within seconds. You don't just hear the tune. You relive the moment you first danced with them, or the time you played that song together in the car. These sensory triggers make it feel like the person is still present, even if they're long gone. Social media adds another layer. In the past, people faded naturally from memory when there was no easy way to keep up with them. But now, with a few clicks, you can see what your ex is doing, who your crush is hanging out with, or how that person you once knew is living their life. Each glimpse reactivates the emotional imprint. It's like reopening a wound every time you scroll past their face. Because of culture and media, we're conditioned to believe that unforgettable people are proof of true love or destiny. But in reality, the reason they stick isn't always about fate. It's often about the stories we've been told and the constant reminders surrounding us. When your environment keeps echoing their presence, it's no wonder your mind does too. Another powerful reason someone lingers in your thoughts is because of the words that were never spoken. Human beings are wired to search for meaning, and when things are left unsaid, the mind doesn't just let it go. It keeps circling back, replaying old moments, imagining what could have been said differently, or wondering what might have happened if you'd spoken up. These what-ifs become mental loops that are hard to escape. Maybe you never confessed your feelings to someone you cared about, and now you imagine how they might have reacted if you had been honest. Or maybe someone hurt you deeply, but you never got the chance to say how it affected you. Those unsaid words hang in the air, like unfinished sentences, and your brain desperately tries to complete them. Every time you think about that person, you also think about the conversations that never happened, and that keeps them alive in your memory. There's also the mystery factor. When you don't know what the other person was truly thinking or feeling, your mind tries to fill in the blanks. You start writing their lines for them, building entire scenarios in your imagination. Did they feel the same way? Were they holding back too? Could things have turned out differently? The lack of answers keeps the door open, and as long as the door is open, your thoughts keep walking through it. This is why many people say it's harder to forget the ones they never had than the ones they did. A relationship that never began, or a conversation that never happened, lives on in the mind as endless possibility. And possibility is often more powerful than reality, because it never gets the chance to disappoint you. The unspoken words remain perfect in your imagination, and that perfection is what makes them unforgettable. There's a difference between remembering someone and being trapped by thoughts of them. Thinking about a person from time to time is normal, but when your mind keeps looping back to them, no matter what you're doing, it can cross the line into obsession. Obsessive thinking feels like you've lost control of the steering wheel in your own head. Even when you tell yourself to stop, your brain sneaks them back into the conversation. It's like trying not to think about a pink elephant. The harder you resist, the stronger the thought comes back. Signs of obsession include constantly checking their social media, replaying old conversations word for word, or creating scenarios about them in your head over and over. You might find that hours slip away while you're lost in those loops. It can even start affecting your daily life, your mood, and your ability to focus on work or relationships. Instead of living in the present, you're stuck in a mental prison where that person is always center stage. Psychologists explain this as rumination, a cycle where your thoughts keep circling without moving forward. Rumination usually shows up when your brain is trying to solve a problem it doesn't have the tools to fix. You keep thinking about the person because your mind is still searching for closure, answers, or a resolution that might never come. It feels like you're doing something productive by thinking it through, but really, you're just spinning your wheels. The danger is that rumination feeds itself. The more you think about them, the stronger the neural pathways in your brain become, making it even easier to think about them the next time. Before long, the person isn't just someone in your past or your present, they're a mental habit, and habits are much harder to break than one-time thoughts. That's why obsession feels so heavy, like you're carrying someone with you no matter how far you try to run. Breaking the cycle of obsessive thoughts isn't about forcing yourself to forget someone. It's about giving your mind something healthier to focus on. One of the first steps is simply becoming aware of the loop. When you catch yourself drifting back to that person, instead of beating yourself up, gently acknowledge it. Tell yourself, "I'm thinking about them again," and then redirect. The act of noticing weakens the automatic grip those thoughts have. Journaling can also help. Writing down what you're feeling gets the swirl of thoughts out of your head and onto paper, where they feel less overwhelming. Some people even write letters to the person they can't stop thinking about. Not to send, but to release the weight of what's unsaid. Putting your thoughts into words can create the closure your brain is desperate for, even if the other person never reads them. Mindfulness and prayer are powerful tools too. When your mind starts to wander back, focus on your breathing, repeat a short prayer, or recite a verse that brings you peace. This not only interrupts the loop, but also fills the space with something calming. The Bible encourages us in Philippians 4:8 to think on what is true, noble, and pure. Redirecting your focus doesn't erase the person, but it reclaims control over your mind. It also helps to introduce new routines. The brain is like a garden. The more you water certain thoughts, the stronger they grow. But when you start building new habits, learning a skill, exercising, spending time with supportive people, you're planting fresh seeds. Over time, those new experiences grow stronger than the old ones. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means slowly training your brain to value what's in front of you instead of what's behind you. And though it takes time, every small step weakens the hold of those persistent thoughts. Letting go doesn't mean erasing someone from your memory, and it doesn't mean pretending they never mattered. It means learning how to carry the memory without letting it control you. Sometimes, people try so hard to forget that they end up thinking about the person even more. True release comes when you stop fighting the memory and instead accept it as part of your story. They were in your life for a season, and that season left an imprint, but it doesn't define your entire journey. Acceptance is powerful because it shifts the question from "how do I forget them" to "what can I learn from having known them?" Maybe they taught you what love can feel like. Maybe they showed you what heartbreak feels like, and in turn, what you need to heal from. Maybe they revealed patterns in yourself, things you want to change, things you want to protect, things you want to grow. Every person who takes up space in your heart also leaves lessons behind. It's also worth remembering that memories don't lose their meaning when you move on. You don't have to despise the past to build a better future. In fact, you can honor what once was by choosing to grow from it instead of clinging to it. Holding on keeps you tied to the pain. Letting go frees you to see the memory for what it was, a moment in time, not a lifelong sentence. When you let go, you don't erase the person, you simply take away their power to keep you stuck. You can remember without aching, reflect without obsessing, and even smile without longing. That's when you know you've moved forward. It's not forgetting that heals you. It's learning to live fully, even with the memory still there. The beautiful thing about the human mind is that it's not fixed. It can be renewed. The Bible talks about this in Romans 12:2, where it says, "Be transformed by the renewing of your mind." That means even when your thoughts feel stuck on someone, you're not doomed to stay there. Renewal is possible. The same brain that got wired to think about them can be rewired to focus on new things, healthier things, things that give life instead of draining it. Philippians 4:8 also gives us a blueprint. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, think about such things. Shifting your thoughts doesn't mean ignoring the person who lingers in your memory, but it means choosing what you feed your mind daily. If your heart keeps circling back to them, fill your life with words, prayers, and practices that redirect your attention toward hope. This is where faith comes in. You don't have to fight the battle in your own strength. Ask Jesus to give you peace that surpasses understanding. Ask Him to loosen the hold of the person on your heart. Pray for the courage to release them and for the grace to embrace what's ahead. Renewal doesn't happen all at once. Some days you'll feel free. Other days, the thoughts will come rushing back. But over time, with consistency and prayer, the weight begins to lift. And remember, your story isn't finished just because they're not in it anymore. Sometimes God removes people because He's preparing space for better things, new relationships, or deeper healing. What feels like loss now may actually be the doorway to a richer future. Holding on keeps you tied to the past, but letting go allows God to write the next chapter. And when your focus shifts from the person you can't stop thinking about to the God who holds your future, that's when true renewal begins. So when you find yourself asking why you can't stop thinking about someone, the truth is layered. It's not just you being weak or overly sentimental. It's the way your brain, your emotions, and even your spirit work together. Science explains it through chemicals and memory loops. Psychology shows us how unfinished stories and unspoken words create open loops that never close. Trauma reminds us why painful people feel unforgettable, while crushes and exes reveal how addictive love and longing can feel. And spiritually, those deep bonds can run so strong they feel like chains until you learn to release them. The important thing to remember is this: you're not broken for holding on. You're human. Your brain was built to remember. Your heart was built to care. And your soul was built to connect. That's why certain people leave such a heavy mark. They touch something deep in you. But just because the memory is strong doesn't mean you're trapped by it forever. You have the ability to break the cycle, to acknowledge what happened, to learn from it, and to let go without losing the lessons it brought. Healing isn't forgetting. It's learning to carry the memory differently. And as time passes, the grip loosens. The thoughts that once felt like chains turn into reminders, and the reminders turn into quiet lessons. If you're stuck right now, know this: it won't always feel this way. Your heart will not always ache the same. Your mind will not always replay the same scenes. Renewal is possible, and freedom is real. The people you can't stop thinking about may have shaped you, but they don't have to define you. You get to decide what comes next, and when you choose to release, you make room for peace, for joy, and for the new story waiting to be written in your life. If this opened your eyes to why someone stays stuck in your mind, then don't miss the next video popping up on your screen. It dives even deeper into what happens in the first 7 days after death.